thank you all for joining us for this session on propelling your enterprise forward with the power of data. My name is Brandon Purcell. I am a principal analyst at Forrester Research. For those of you who don't know Forrester, we research technology and best practices around using things like analytics to drive your business. I used to be one of you, however. I used to be a data scientist or led a team of data scientists actually building the models that you may use to predict something like lifetime value or customer churn. So if you see me around, please talk to me about what you're doing at your companies. Today, however, I get to talk to really smart people like yourselves, and we call these people at Forrester customer insights professionals. So their mission in life is to take all of that data that you're collecting on your customers and find these golden nuggets, these insights that you can use to hopefully win, serve, and retain those customers. But as you all know, it's not as easy as that, right? When customers interact and transact with you, they leave a data footprint. In an ideal world, you should be able to transform this data into insights through some sort of data preparation and analysis. And once you have those insights, ultimately you need to take action on them to be able to win, serve, and retain your customers. And this is a circular process rather than linear because you need to be learning from the efficacy of those actions. So did the customer respond favorably to this campaign or didn't she? And that becomes a further data point to optimize this model. Unfortunately, this life cycle, this insights life cycle is broken, and it's broken in between those three phases. And the most significant pain point that I hear day in and day out from our clients at Forrester is this. We're drowning in data and we're starving for insight. So the problem isn't that you don't have the data. You're probably collecting the data. We heard talk of data lakes this morning. But are you able to actually transform that data into insights? And trust me, I'd love to talk about machine learning and AI all day. But as you guys know, you can't even start to approach that stuff without having well-governed, well-understood, well-prepared data. And we ask people, every year we do this survey called the State of Customer Analytics Survey, and we ask folks, what are the top challenges you face when you're trying to extract insights from customer data? And these top two challenges here are probably familiar to many of you. They're all about the data, right? Ensuring data quality from multiple sources and also just accessing data from multiple sources. This is this year's data. We've been running this survey every year for the last 8 years, and those have been the top two challenges every year. So data remains a key challenge. There are organizational challenges as well, right? Bridging the disconnected priorities between IT and the business. IT wants to keep the lights on, and the business wants to drive revenue goals. How do you actually navigate those two disconnected priorities? Of course, we've all heard about the dearth of or scarcity of data scientists in the market. Hiring these folks, hiring these people. Earlier, we heard talks about athletes, good athletes, people who may have soft and hard skills. Those people are hard to come by. And then further, getting buy-in from business stakeholders on the value of data and analytics. Not everybody has made this cultural shift to be data hungry. A lot of companies I speak to are still doing things, making intuitive decisions based on intuition, or even decisions based on inertia. This is the way we've always done stuff. We're going to continue doing it that way. And then finally, I think that this is the pocket of people who've been able to surmount the data problems. They're starting to run into problems with actually taking these insights and turning them into actions. Okay, just because we know this pocket of customers are going to churn, what do we do with that? So if there's one thing I want you to take away from today, it's that the most important piece of this is data and analytics governance. Without that, you can't do any of the fancy machine learning, customer analytics, advanced analytics, NLP, any of those buzzwords you're hearing about, especially AI, right? So make data and analytics governance your top priority. Otherwise, that nice hockey stick graph is going to do you little good when your company shutters its doors. And here I like to think of this idea of data gerrymandering. Some of you may be following the political climate. In Pennsylvania specifically, there was one voting district, electoral district, that looked like goofy kicking Donald Duck, right? There was no reason for it to look like that, but it had been gerrymandered to favor one party. In organizations, you get the same thing, right? If your goal is sales and sales overall are down, well, maybe you could manipulate the data. Maybe you could focus on sales in new markets where you didn't have a presence last year, so year-over-year growth looks amazing. That type of data gerrymandering may make things look good today when in reality your business is failing. So you have to understand your key business objectives to be able to understand how to quantify your performance using data. That's enough for me. I want to turn it over to 3 esteemed Looker users today. I have with me on this panel. So first we have Ashley Tuzzolini. She comes to us she's a leader of data analytics and automation at Autodesk here in San Francisco. And next we have Emad Taliep, who's a customer experience data analyst at MassMutual. And finally, we have Harish Ramachandraiah, who is the senior manager for data and analytics engineering platform at Sunrun. And for those of you who don't know Sunrun, they're the #1 residential solar company in the United States. So I think I'm actually going to start with you, Harish. I want to talk about data for a second. So each of you represents a successful and well-known large company. Can you give us an idea of how your data sources or your pipeline has changed over time? Probably more data overall, but what do the sources look like, and are they more diverse?
Yes, certainly. I mean, in terms of the pipeline, I mean, historically we only used to deal with the traditional financial data sets, either coming from ERP or from CRM, Salesforce, and so on and so forth. So, which we are already doing. Again, in terms of the volumes, it is much larger, as well as the number of pipelines have significantly increased. And the platform is there to ingest some of these data sets in much faster pace. We are looking at close to half an hour kind of ingestion time. But more than that, I would add on some of the nuance to the data sources have also changed. The kind of data sets which we are ingesting is, since Sunrun is engaged with the long-term customer side of it, close to 20 years of contracts which we have to support to the customer. So some of the areas which we also tend to focus is on the quality of customer reps. So you're looking at a shorter set of information or certain textual data sets which are coming in, and structured, unstructured data sets, which we, on top of the traditional ingesting, we also do heavy transformation of it and be able to service some of the needs from the downstream, whether it's reporting or doing certain monitoring, alert mechanism, and so on and so forth. So things have certainly changed beyond the volume, velocity, but also the kind of structures of data sets over the course of time. And the way we've mitigated that also is to introduce certain processes in place in terms of auto-reconciliation, the source system and the target system, so that you know exactly is the quality of the data coming in is up to mark. If not, provide certain alert to the engineering team to take appropriate action on a day-to-day basis. So what you get for the end user is a very authoritative data sets.
That's great, thank you. That addresses that data hygiene issue that we saw in the data earlier. Okay, Emad, at MassMutual, you want to talk to me a little bit about how your data sources have changed over time?
Yeah, sure. I think to start off that answer, it's important to just focus on the pipeline because, at least in my mind, that's what has driven some of the other decisions that we have then taken with respect to our data sources. Namely, do we need to gather some new stuff, or can we reuse what we've already collected, since, I guess, MassMutual in particular, we're in a position of being a company that has been in business for almost 2 centuries. So we've got a head start in some of that. But back to the pipeline. Before we really started taking analytics seriously at our company, we were in a position where we have just our multiple business areas, multiple objectives in marketing, underwriting, sales, policy administration, and they had all just kind of built from the ground up their own kinds of things, their own data sets, their own standards, which is probably familiar if you've gotten to that part of your curve. And what we actually did over time was to bring everything into a common warehouse. So Vertica is our system of record for almost everything that we have, rather than it being split across a variety of different database solutions or a mixture of in-database versus flat file versus obtained in some other kind of way. And that was a tax we had to pay to start off with, but it's been really beneficial for us because once that happened, we were able to just experiment a lot more quickly and investigate relationships between other data sets that we may have and something that we had been working with in a pretty one-dimensional way just to start. So to answer the other part of the question of how does that impact our selection of data sources, as I alluded to, sometimes we just get to dig back into what we already have because now we have the luxury of not having to import it multiple times, ingest it multiple times. We get some flexibility and we can extract additional value and provide something interesting to our lines of business. Although also that experimentation process has led to a few instances where once we have that common core established of the infrastructure and where data is residing, we have experimented a little bit with acquiring new things. So that tends to be a bit more project and experimentally driven, where it's hard to predict. If we need it, we get it.
Great, thanks, Emad. Ashley, how about at Autodesk?
Sure. So I think we've always been great at tracking the back end, the more traditional sources of data. So you have, orders, account. Where demand is growing internally is more behavioral data. So data that's coming from our products, our services, as well as digital online properties. So this is our web properties as well as social networks. So the demand is really coming from this need to really understand the customer 360, more holistically understand the customer. And while we have this data, it's always been in these kind of disparate silos across the organization. I think similar to what you're doing at MassMutual, we're building out a centralized data platform where we're bringing all of this data together and joining it in a way that's meaningful for the organization to really, truly understand the customer. Another really important source of data that we're investigating is third-party data. So there's a lot of vendors out there that are doing amazing things like around competitive intelligence, for example. Again, another piece of data that we would like to bring in to really understand our customer. We've always collected this kind of data, but it's been very one-off. People had it on their laptops in an Excel spreadsheet, and we didn't really scale the use of that. So we're trying to look at how we can successfully implement that into our data platform and make it more accessible across the organization.
Great, thank you. Thanks. I kind of wrestle with the 360-degree view of the customer term because on the one hand, you definitely want a holistic view of the customer that includes first-party and third-party, maybe even second-party data. On the other hand, I worry that a lot of companies wait for that perfect state, before starting to even do analysis on the data they have. Because the truth is, 360-degree view is an elusive goal, right? You can keep adding more sources. But again, I think it's really important to connect the data sources together. You do have to have a holistic view. And you in the beginning of your answer, Ashley, you touched on this important kind of culture shift that you're saying that there is demand from internal stakeholders for this behavioral data. So how have you seen that base shift over time? Have you seen the culture shift at Autodesk that Frank was talking about this morning? More people hungry for data, this idea of the instrumented workforce?
Yes. So first of all, we're hiring a lot of data analysts, data engineers, data scientists at a rapid rate. I mean, it's distributed across the organization. We have a centralized organization, the data analytics and automation organization, that does have an advanced analytics team, but really analytics is being conducted across our organization. But it's really not just those personas or those individuals, those data knowledge workers that are responsible for it anymore. It's kind of the responsibility of employees across the organization to really understand how to access, how to use, and how to analyze data to answer questions. Where my team comes into play here is we're really here to enable employees at the company to provide a path to training, to tools, to access data, so that they can start answering these questions on their own. I think somebody had mentioned, you had mentioned around data science, there's this lack of talent out there, or there's a lot of demand and not enough supply to support this. We're trying to figure out ways in which we can try to grow that within and to up-level the data analytics skill set within our organization internally. Having that centralized data platform certainly helps. Having things like Looker in place helps in us delivering analytics more broadly. And the one other thing I would mention is that it's really important that we can communicate out that there is that we're tracking the consistency, the quality, the completeness of the data, so that we can develop trust in what we're developing out in this data platform, so people feel like they can go to this one central source of truth to answer their business questions.
Thanks, Ashley. Yeah, trust is such a key theme today in the use of data, and overall with all of these kind of black box solutions where you're not sure exactly how the data is being manipulated. Emad, do you want to talk about your internal stakeholder base at MassMutual and how that's changed over time, and if you've seen any similar cultural shifts?
So no surprises, more people want data, and that's just the nature of the beast. More people want additional access to the data, so their initial statement to us is not, give me some dashboards and I'll be fine. They really want to crack it open and explore. Although it's an interesting tension that we're seeing, just for context's sake, we're about a year into adopting Looker at our company as the BI and analytics tool of choice. And one of the first use cases that we led off with this whole stack was what we call digital analytics. So that's a mixture of web and mobile, just looking at customer behavior, where customers are going, how they're interacting with all of our digital properties. And the tension that I'm seeing is that even though we do have a fair number of power users, so in more Looker terms, dashboarding, as well as the ability to do explore from here functionality, we're finding that people are still in a bit of a reporting mindset rather than an insight deriving mindset, where we've gone through this kind of process similar to software development of defining requirements of what they're going to see as important from a metrics perspective, from a dashboard perspective, filters, and some of the ins and outs of user experience. And that ends the conversation for a little bit. For some of our stakeholders, we do have some people who translate prior experience of being more of a in-the-weeds data analyst or domain area analyst, and they're very comfortable with the explore functionality. And that's a kind of mentality that I want to see spread at our company, because it upskills those workers in giving them not just, I mean, yes, they might do it through a graphical interface to abstract away what someone who's doing everything in raw SQL would be doing, but they still have that mindset that they develop. And what that frees up as a consequence is everyone in more of the data professions at our company will steer their attention away from the business as usual and focus on new ways to derive insight and to make insight apparent to all of our customers. So we're continuing to move the needle on that. I think having a scalable platform helps. I think having data centralized helps, and espousing these ideas of democratized data just to get people a sense of what it's all about. Where we're going to continue to move the needle is in training, in continuing to pare down the interfaces so that way you can get to your answers quicker. And I guess in a way, opening people's eyes to the possibilities of what they can do. You know, we have these things available. Maybe we just walk you through a few cases so that you can see the process together.
Great. Thanks, Emad. Harish, how about at Sunrun? Are people demanding more access to data there?
That's true. Just to add on to what they said, I think being in solar industry, it is certainly very highly competitive, as well as fairly capital intensive kind of industry. So it's for the business to run, they're bound to look into the numbers on a fairly regular basis. So some of the challenges what we had in the past, we have overcome that in terms of looking at those KPIs cut across every business unit. And so the culture has certainly shifted. And to enable that, some of the things what we have incorporated in the process was to ensure that the data quality is accurate. And we model it in a way that it gets consumed by the business. And the biggest shift for us was historically engineering or the IT used to not only enable the backend, but also end up taking the burden of addressing some of the complex reporting solutions out there. And that is something which we consciously took in this phase to just hold ourselves back and ensure that the quality is good, but beyond that, in terms of exploratory aspects of it, it is the business which takes ownership of those, building those reports. And so certainly that thirst was there within the business. They've taken on that role of building those reports and start spreading it across the business. So those things have certainly changed, and Looker has certainly helped us to accelerate those processes. Some of the timelines what we used to historically take has dramatically decreased in terms of the development cycle. And then the other part is we are able to make immediate shifts in terms of any business needs, changes happening. We are able to turn it around much faster pace in today's world.
Great.
Those things have helped for the business to take on.
Right, yeah. Thank you, Harish. So we were just focusing on the business, the internal stakeholders or your internal customers. How about external customers? How are you using data to better meet their needs today? Whoever would like to.
Sunrun runs both direct as well as indirect business. So you have a lot of exposure from our channel partners, which are usually kind of an outsourced installers, and so and that is one aspect of the business, but also the financial side, from where most of the funds comes, is a fairly complex financial systems, which we again engage with the third parties, and some of those areas we are in the process of keeping it transparent, not only maintaining those KPIs for the internal folks, but also start exposing this just to measure their metrics in terms of their installation process, the project's movements, various metrics which we on a day-to-day maintain, and we are planning to expose those data sets into them. Right now we are just in the process of hardening those data sets, first internally for the direct side of the business, and then the same set of metrics we plan to start exposing it. And certainly I think we have Looker features in terms of shipping those in PDF files, CSV file, also the API in case if they were to come and grab those data sets, it is available. So
yeah,
something which we could not do it in the past.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. Yeah. Emad?
So biggest hint is probably in my title up there. We have a whole set of workers at MassMutual, over 500 people, just spanning product management, delivery management, data analytics, engineering, and science. We call that our customer experience organization at the company. And so really everything that we do, even if you were to think about just the website that we have and our ambition to move to digital distribution channels in insurance and financial services, you might say more generally. Our objective is to make sure that along the way to discovering everything about the products that we offer, applying for that, or any other part of the life cycle. So when you're a policyholder, maintaining your account, looking into your benefits, changing certain options, all the things that you might go to a mixture of call centers and written forms and online stuff in order to do. We want to bring that into more of a digital channel with the digital distribution power to back it. And that needs a big emphasis on understanding what's working, what's not. So we tend to deploy it, just to draw a bit from my examples from digital analytics. This is really important for us as we design different user flows for how people log in and register for our sites. We just make sure that we're seeing healthy volumes in moving through migration processes if we're switching from one process to another, or just looking at those volumes day over day and just seeing how much engagement, how much activity there is. Are people getting to where they need to go, or are they just abandoning the process somewhere? So we keep a close eye on that kind of stuff, and we've got a whole team to do it.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks. And Ashley, how about at Autodesk, where your customers are people who are using your software to change the way products are designed or buildings are built? How are you using data to meet their needs?
Yeah, so I would say that all of the decisions that we're making right now in terms of data are focused on the customer experience. So how do we better support the customer, make sure that they're getting a consistent experience at every single touch point that they have with Autodesk? And that could be in the investigation, the exploration part of the journey, so understanding what products they should use, being able to identify what their needs are, being able to suggest products that they should be using to help better achieve their needs and objectives, all the way down to the kind of renewal phase where we want to be able to identify customers that may not be adopting our products. We want to understand why they're not adopting. So we have teams that are looking at all stages of that journey. As I said, we're kind of distributed in our analytics. We've got teams that are just focused on the pre-purchase stage, the post-purchase stage. Within our advanced analytics team, we're developing statistical models to be able to identify customers that may be at risk of dropping their subscription. So we want to make sure that our sales teams are equipped with that information so that they can intervene and understand what the challenges are that the customer is experiencing. So yeah, I would say, we're looking at it, holistically, again, trying to get that 360 view.
Right.
The other interesting thing that we're doing with data is trying to understand all this data that we're amassing on our customers, whether it be, as I said, through our products and services or, digital online behavior. There's a lot of insights that we're drawing on them that we think that they may find valuable to them. So we're looking at what types of insights we can glean from our data to be able to actually provide to our customers as a value add and how they're making their business decisions. So
that's great, really great. Yeah, I love the fact that you're using analytics across the customer lifecycle. All the way from exploration through conversion, through hopefully renewal and a long lifetime with Autodesk. Great. Let's get a little techie for a second. I'm going to ask a couple of you, whoever wants to jump in about infrastructure, because your needs are pressing. Scale is very large. How do you choose an infrastructure stack that scales up to meet your needs?
So I can take a cut at it.
Okay.
What we focus on for the infrastructure side is one thing that we keep in mind is the market. Who is an engineering professional? Who's a data professional? And what are they really going to get excited about working with? And that's going to mean, not being a stranger to some of the, less enterprise, more emerging kinds of technologies that are out there. We're also a fairly big fan of open source solutions to actually power some of our stack. On the web analytics side, we use something called Snowplow, which will handle just the firing of web events, the collection, enrichment, ingestion into our databases. And we also use a variety of other tools like Spark to take care of some of the heavy processing that we take out of the database and move back in. We use Jenkins as an automation engine, and we use Vertica as our database solution. And just the sum of all those factors is we want to have a tech stack that's going to scale, that's going to be flexible, that we can adopt in our own kind of way. And I think crucially, even though it's hosted in AWS, it is still in some other sense of the word in-house, in that we've been instrumental in laying out the architecture and design, how these pieces fit together. We retain that knowledge, and we have that as a value proposition when we go out and recruit to say, you're not just taking a solution that's managed by a service provider or something and just hoping that it works. You're actually going to be working on this in ways that is going to move our enterprise forward.
Thanks. Harish, did you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've done is we've kept it fairly simple in terms of our tech stack, consciously just to make sure we don't introduce some of the unknowns. And in general, we've picked up Google as our backend platform. We have the legacy environment still up and running. In parallel, we are slowly transitioning that into Google, and as well as in terms of ingestion, we are using some of the open source components within that, the data flow and data procs, as well as Informatica in terms of ingesting the cloud options which they have. Again, from a data warehousing, from the target standpoint, we take advantage of BigQuery, and I think we did the right decision by, I mean, some of the recent announcement to take advantage of not only your traditional BI related reporting, but also to use some of the ML and AI features coming out of TensorFlow within the same ecosystem. So that's how we are positioning ourselves, and so it's fairly earlier on for us, and we do plan to ingest some of the fairly voluminous data from our production data for solar panels and things like that, and so we will slowly graduate into some of the other databases along with the BigQuery as such. So we've kept it simple just to make sure that the initial phase is well stabilized, and then we start accelerating. But for now, it is auto scale. Whether you're talking of ingesting voluminous data, it can auto scale itself, as well as in terms of BigQuery, it naturally has the features which can scale up to very high volumes of data queries and such. So.
Great, thanks. You mentioned TensorFlow in your response, which actually brings us to the next question, which is around AI and ML. We hear the buzzwords all the time, right? I mean, I theoretically research AI and ML at Forrester, although a lot of the times, like I said, I'm talking about data. So I'm wondering, are you guys starting to experiment with AI and machine learning? Is it on your roadmap? How does it fit into your strategy?
Yeah. I'll say, I think one thing that we're starting to look at, and going back to delivering a platform that's trusted and that can be used across the organization, is around anomaly detection. So, having machine learning to alert us if there are any inconsistencies or issues with the data, to ensure that the resiliency of the platform. So we do monitor the health of our platform and the health of what's being delivered through the data feeds, but we need to get better at that. And anything that we can do to put in place and leverage machine learning to facilitate this, so that we can minimize or even eliminate some of the downstream issues that happen from when we don't catch these on time. That's certainly something that we're starting to investigate.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. How about at MassMutual, Emad?
Yeah, Ashley brought up a great application of using anomaly detection. Your application specifically in just making sure that the data has the integrity that you're looking for and what you're doing. The spin that I have been considering, maybe in a quarter or two, is to look at, could we use this ability to detect trends, to detect outliers, to pare down the reports that we issue on a regular basis to our stakeholders? Because if you guys are subscribed to like any newsletter or any service that says, hey, we got a new feature, do you tune out most of that? If you do, then so do all of your business stakeholders with like reports that don't have numbers that change very much. And it could be a function of maybe you picked some pretty bad metrics that don't reflect any kind of change. Maybe there's genuinely no change. But regardless of what the ground truth situation is, I've been interested in looking at a potential application of just, can we tell you a story based on what's different, what's trending in a certain direction, so that way we use your time wisely and don't have you thinking there's a decision to be made at the first of every month just because you get a report. So that's one thing that we've been looking at prospectively. We also have dabbled a bit in, some of this is piloted, some of this is under development, but just seeing how we can embed this again into the customer experience. We're looking at applications that range from risk underwriting to marketing tactics to even just back-end operational kind of work just to see if we can streamline that process and really harness this technology.
Great. Thanks, Emad. Harish, yesterday you and I talked about a really interesting use case you had.
Sure. At Sunrun, again, there are a number of use cases for the machine learning side of it. One of the areas where we are focused is in the present world, the way we generate the proposal for a given homeowner is by looking at the rooftop dimensions. And it is done manually in terms of designing the roof size and any blocks which are there. We then figure out, what is the maximum number of panels which we can address for that given rooftop, and subsequently there are a number of algorithms which we lay on top, degradation value, weather patterns, and so on and so forth for the next 20 years, and we generate a proposal. But there's a lot of human intervention. So that's one area where we are focused to make it automated, right? Because we do have a fairly rich data sets from our existing customer. We do want to train the model and be able to automate those things. And we've done a couple of POCs in some of those areas, and we do plan to automate that using machine learning. And on the back end, the advantages, we do have all the data sets laid out, something which would accelerate the data scientists to say, they don't need to worry about the quality of the data which is coming in. We've done the transformation, time and tested, and taking it beyond that and automating just the proposal side of it will tremendously accelerate the human interventions into it.
That's great.
As well as the downstream IoT related for grid services, cancellation for sales pipeline, and so on and so forth. But this is one of the core pieces which we are looking at for 2019 to set stage.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's really fascinating. There's really two kind of ways that AI is manifesting itself in the analytics world, and you guys touched on both of them. One of them is, of course, the way that we're using data and applying machine learning to models to do things like, let's say, computer vision using neural networks. But the other is also in the way that we surface insights, the ability to accentuate the actual business analyst to detect anomalies that you or I may not know to actually look for in our trending analysis, or to bubble up root causes that may be impacting a much larger metric that may not change that much over time. Before we turn it over to the audience for questions, I just want to ask you guys about your future plans looking towards 2019. What are your top priorities in terms of analytics and data governance and management?
So I think for us, as we talked about, there's a lot of data, a lot of new users. We're building up this platform. We've built out these certified data tables, and we've curated explorers with Looker. Now it's about training and bringing people on board, and the data is complex, and there's a lot of assumptions that are around it, and caveats, and it's messy, and if you're not familiar with working with it on a regular basis, it can be really daunting, and people can misuse it. And so we're looking at how do we scale to support that. So how do we automate this and make sure that we are not only giving access to individuals across the organization to this rich intelligence and this rich data, but we're also giving them the tools to be successful in using it and analyzing it. I think building out this platform is the first part of this. This is, we're building out this, we're putting a lot of process and taking all this raw data and creating these rich, certified, trusted data tables and creating these explorers that make it easier. But we don't have enough individuals in place to be able to bring everyone. There's not just one guy in the company who's going to be able to say, here's all the data and here's what it all means, right? There's a lot of tribal knowledge in place. So we're trying to figure out how we can scale that, building out data catalogs, building out trainings, and there's just got to be a way to automate this and scale it. So that's what I'm focused a lot of my time on right now.
It's really exciting.
Yeah.
It's really exciting. Data democratization needs acculturation and information and all of that. Yeah. Emad, how about you?
A lot of what Ashley said on more of the operational and the culture side definitely applies for MassMutual. Also in general for 2019, and it's been an anthem really throughout, but 2019 will give us another chance to focus on it yet again, is just the onward march from a descriptive mode of operation to a prescriptive mode of operation. I think that was a point pretty well stated by, I believe, Terrence Fisher from Turner. He was at the keynote. And we're definitely taking that to heart as well for some of the other ML and AI applications that we would embed in the process of delivering good products to customers, taking care of the underwriting process, optimizing all of our operations. And I think with that, I'll throw in a caveat, which probably came on our radars at or around the time that GDPR became a thing. And you're probably thinking about that in more of a cookies kind of perspective. But even though we're in to put it mildly, a different regulatory environment, I don't think we can avoid just the complications or the questions of ethics and transparency that would yield in the process, especially when we're talking about something like, in our case, exploring the intersection between a policy that we issue to somebody based on health factors, and you could pull out any number of proxies. There's a lot of rich research on that. And just deciding, how much is that premium? What kind of benefit are you getting out of it? We want to make sure that we do things efficiently and in a pretty correct way, but we also want to be fair about what we're doing. And fairness is not just an algorithmic thing. It could also just be this opt-in idea where we're seeing that on the website. Who knows how exactly it's going to pan out in some of these other industries, especially here where it's pretty freewheeling and dealing, but we still have to be responsible, because if we don't do that, it doesn't matter how cool your models are. All this stuff we're talking about with machine learning isn't going to mean anything if you lose confidence in your customer base and they go to someone that does it better than you.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I think you're absolutely right. We really do need to think about whether we're creating these models in a way that treats people equitably, or if it's actually discriminating and harmfully biased against certain individuals. Thanks for bringing that up. Harish, how about at Sunrun? What's on your radar in 2019?
2019, I think our goal is to go ahead and complete the 2.0 journey at Sunrun, to not only address the sales side of it, but there are a number of other areas in terms of finance side, as well as logistics, and most importantly on the AI ML side of initiatives. So there's quite a bit of work to be carved out for us in the coming years. Yeah.
Great.
And Sunrun has not only the finance but the manufacture. We don't manufacture, but there's a lot of logistics related work which we undertake, and so that's a fairly massive set of data which we need to ingest and start reporting on it.
Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you very much to my panelists. Thank you to Looker for having us, and of course to all of you for joining us today.